The weather has been difficult, but the people here are amazing, and this festival seems to be incredibly genuine, and I love these kinds of festivals because it's not an industry festival, and you feel people are here for the right reasons because they're passionate about films. And I was telling you earlier, I had the tremendous privilege of meeting the Dalai Lama this morning, so it makes it an even better experience. So I'm in a great mood. Passion. I mean, it's a work of passion. Ritu, I was just speaking with Ritu about it, and they organized this festival out of nothing, and you guys, volunteers, are coming for free from all over India and the world even, which is incredible. So these people wouldn't come here if the festival wasn't special. And same for filmmakers and for people from film. They come here to meet each other in a warm, and friendly and human environment, and see films, discuss them. So this is the type of festival I actually enjoy the most. Well, the Dispossessed is a documentary about the mechanisms by which farmers are being impoverished worldwide. People who live in urban areas don't realize that half of the world population, if not more, are smallholder food producers. And these people are actually the ones who are hungry on the planet. So this is a crazy paradox that is totally, that is not understood by most people, because there's a massive migration from rural areas to cities worldwide. And so if you go to Delhi or to Mumbai and you see the construction workers in big skyscrapers that are being built, they're all farmers. They're like in Delhi, they all come from Bihar mostly, or from Uttar Pradesh, and they're all farmers who cannot live out of farming anymore. And they're being forced to migrate to do these slavery jobs in big cities. So this is the biggest human story going on in the world that is never covered by mainstream media. First of all, because mainstream media is completely controlled by corporate entities. And second of all, they're not interested in these stories. And these stories are too profound to be summed up into 2 minutes. So you just ask me to precisely and concisely tell you about the film. It's hard because there are many things to say. There are not that many Indians who know that there has been 400,000 suicides in Maharashtra only, in the past 15 years. This is tragic. These farmers are drinking toxic pesticides to kill themselves because they're desperate, because they fall into this cycle of debt and despair, because every year they need to pay for the seeds, they need to pay for the fertilizer, the pesticide, the insecticide, and then the government is not providing any infrastructure for irrigation or for and they are completely dependent upon world market for price, and so they fall into this cycle of debt, and there's no way they're going to repay their debts. And so this is an extremely stressful existence, and it's a tragic story. And I was very lucky to meet a fantastic journalist called P. Sainath, who I think is a genius, and I think he's probably one of the most interesting journalists in the world. He founded this citizen media here in India called PARI, People's Archive for Rural India, and I think they do the best journalism in the country, and if not in Asia. And so he speaks at length in my film of the roots of the problem of these issues, which comes from, of course, the colonial era, but has been compounded by neoliberalism, by what we call free trade, which is an absurd, paradoxical formulation, because there's nothing free about free trade. Basically, a bunch of bureaucrats in Geneva and London have to decide how farmers will live, in the world. And by lifting frontiers, by destroying protection at the border, you allow rich farmers from elsewhere in the world to import their food in countries like India, like China, like Haiti, like very poor countries in the world. And of course the local farmers cannot compete with rice or cotton that arrives in the country at half the price they produce it at. So this is actually a genocide. If farmers were a country, we would have to use the word genocide, because there is a genocide going on, and it's economic warfare, and it's outrageous. But we live in a world that this is not outrage anymore. Like we're so soaked into violence. Like since we were born, we were exposed to television, movies, Hollywood or Bollywood or TV series. We're exposed to this imagery that program us on an unconscious level to not care that much about what's going on. So we're completely desensitized. Sinat talks about how there's, I don't know how many thousand journalists at the Lakme Fashion Week in Mumbai, and there's one or two journalists talking about farmers' suicide. This sums up the whole crisis. We live in a world that is completely upside down, in which nobody cares about the farmers anymore. Well, I mean, the making of the film is a long story. A very good friend of mine, a filmmaker, was doing research on it. He was supposed to direct it, and for many reasons, he asked me to direct it instead. And by then, I was actually quite ignorant about this situation. But I read his research, and it got me very interested. Then I came here to research on the ground, and this is when I met Sinat. And I saw a film he was featured in called Nero's Guest, which is heartbreaking and outrageous also. And so, when you get exposed to these kinds of realities, you of course react to it. And as a filmmaker, I felt I had no choice but to tell the story. Now, my film is quite long and it's quite slow, but there's a reason for that. And as I was saying, we live in a world that is completely frantic, and the pace of the world we live in keeps on accelerating. And this has very damageable effect on our brains and on our capacity to think critically and to concentrate on an issue that is complex. And so I wanted to do the exact opposite. So I wanted to slow things down. For this reason, but also because it reflects the time of farming. Farming is a time-consuming activity. We as urban dwellers don't realize this, because we go to the market and we buy some stuff, and we don't really think, how long did this take, and was the farmer paid well enough to do this? So I wanted to slow things down to show what is farming. So that is reflected in the pace of the film and in the length of the film also. Yes, 8.5 by Fellini. It's a film I saw at 20 years old. That completely changed my life. I was destined to become a journalist. I was a journalist actually, and I'd been offered a job in a newspaper, but I wasn't convinced about it. I liked it, but I wasn't passionate about it. And I was interested in cinema. I was watching films from Truffaut, from Buñuel, from Antonioni. Was starting to discover Fellini, and then I saw 8.5, which changed my life. And it's probably the best film about filmmaking that was ever made. It's a film that all great filmmakers also adore. It's Martin Scorsese's favorite film also, and it's a film that opens the boundaries of your imagination also, and what is it to be a filmmaker and why make films, and it's a film also that works on different levels, of course on the first storytelling level, but on many subconscious level. And Fellini is a genius at bringing in dreams into film storylines. So for me, that was very liberating. And when I saw this film, I said I'm going to be a filmmaker.